We are now in the sixth and final part of the Fourth Crusade series by Kings and Generals.
In our previous episode, we covered the Battle of Kłodznica, an encounter which forever changed the geopolitics of the Eastern Balkans. Now, two contenders stood over the remnants of the Latin Empire, ready to take that final step and restore the Eastern Roman Empire. But which dynasty would prevail, Asen or Wascaris? We're often asked by our viewers how we make up. In 1230, after just one decisive encounter, the lands of the Second Bulgarian Tsardom stretched from Thessaly to Belgrade and from Dyrrhachium to Adrianople.
Yeah, things are looking pretty up and up for the Bulgarians at the moment.
The Serbian king, Stefan Radoslav, who supported the now captured ruler of Epirus, Theodore Ducas, became the next target, and after a successful raiding campaign, he was replaced by his brother, Stefan Władysław, in 1234. The latter was positively predisposed towards Ivan Asen II, and even married his daughter, and the two Orthodox nations formed a bulwark against Hungarian expansion and Cumans, who recently broke off. With that front secure, the Tsar now looked to Nicaea for an alliance against the Latin Empire. He was concerned with accomplishing his dream of restoring the empire, as evident from the coins he minted, showing him with the symbols of imperial power. The regent, John of Brienne, wasn't idle, as he brought in 500 fresh knights and 5,000 infantry with the help of Venice to Constantinople, and prepared to make his last stand. However, the reluctance to attack in either direction didn't suit the French knights, and most of them abandoned his cause. But it was in this very critical moment that Geoffrey II succeeded his father as Prince of Morea and pledged his full support to the Latin Empire, sending John 30,000 gold coins annually. The stage was set, and in the summer of 1235, Ivan Asen II of Bulgaria and John III Vatatzits of Nicaea laid siege to Constantinople, which was defended by John of Brienne, a small garrison, and 160 knights. Venice immediately responded to the call to aid, as the Pope was urging Christendom to protect the Queen of Cities and shift their focus from the Holy Land to the Latin Empire, and 25 galleys reinforced the city. The wall was attacked from multiple sides, but the energetic regent managed to repulse the attackers each time, before charging at the enemy camp with a small band of heavy knights, inflicting heavy casualties on the besiegers. Some chroniclers even described his valor and skills to equal that of Hector of Troy. The Nicaean fleet
Actually kind of was super baller, he wrote up. Dang.
Which had 100 galleys, attempted to penetrate the Golden Horn, but it took heavy losses against the Venetians, and the siege was broken. On the 16th of December, the two forces regrouped and laid siege to the city once more, after the Venetians had sailed back home. This siege lasted well into the spring of 1236, until a massive fleet came to the aid of Constantinople, composed of the fleets of Venice, Genoa, Pisa, and Morea. Geoffrey II alone brought 100 knights, 300 crossbowmen, and 500 archers, and together they lifted the blockade. After their defeat, the Nicaeans and Bulgarians signed a 2-year truce with the Latin Empire. But the failure had a profound effect on Ivan Asen II, who once again radically changed his stance. After John of Brienne died in 1237, and the throne passed to 20-year-old Baldwin II, the Tsar hoped he would become regent, so he broke off his alliance with Nicaea, allied with the Latins, and started a correspondence with the Pope in an effort to reconvert back to Catholicism. These actions might have been taken under the pressure of a new crusade which was being organized as Baldwin II toured France, selling precious artifacts in his attempt to gather a large army to recover the lost lands. The Tsar continued to call himself Emperor of Bulgarians and Greeks, and wanted to take Constantinople, but his policy changed as he continued to fund massive building projects which would transform the capital of Tornovo into the Third Rome. The massive Tsarevets royal citadel,
Yeah, we're something of Rome itself, just, again, another Rome, or Rome wannabe.
which was situated on a hill and surrounded by a river, was expanded and became a spiritual center after the Tsar brought dozens of precious relics and built a patriarchal church. The two palaces were built to symbolize the relation between the spiritual and the secular authority, a symbolism derived directly from Byzantine culture. He minted gold coins in Ohrid bearing his image and traded extensively with Regasan merchants, leading to a reign of stability and prosperity, while he deliberated on how to further expand his influence. While the various contenders were fighting for Constantinople, a dark cloud which traveled
Oh no! Oh no, the Mongols. Holy crap. The twists and turns this series takes is unhinged. It just keeps going back and forth, so much keeps happening. I'm telling you, this would be great television material. Oh my.
away from Karakorum was ready to consume them all. The Mongols had reached the Kievan Rus, inflicting destruction on a massive scale. Cumans fled in their wake, and this giant host of nomadic people, which played a key role in the establishment of the Bulgarian Empire, now wreaked havoc in Thrace and Macedonia, and there was nothing Ivanasen II could do to stop them. So instead, he hired some of them to assist his army in the joint siege of Soilum by the Bulgarians and Latins in 1237. It seemed that the uneasy alliance would lead to the complete conquest of Thrace by Bulgaria, while the Latins were hoping to regain land on the coast of the Propontis. But then news arrived that plague broke out in Tornovo, taking the lives of many, including the Patriarch and Ivanasen's wife and son. The Tsar was overwhelmed with grief, and took this as a divine sign that betraying the Nicaeans and fighting alongside the Latins was wrong, so he burned down his siege engines and abandoned the siege. The relations with Nicaea were restored, without any hostilities towards the Latins, as the Bulgarian state took an ambivalent stance towards the regional conflicts and prepared for the impending Mongol invasion. Now a widower, Ivanasen II married Irene, the daughter of Theodore Ducas, who was a guest since the Battle of Khokotnitsa, alongside her father, who was blinded after a failed attempt to stir a riot.
Of course he was, because everyone just loves blinding each other at this time in history.
Immediately after the marriage, Theodore Ducas was freed and returned to Thessaloniki disguised as a beggar. His blindness meant that he was unable to rule according to custom, but it seemed that plotting was in his blood, since he immediately usurped his brother Manuel and placed his son John in his place. Normally this would outrage the Bulgarian overlord, but his newfound love for Theodore's daughter neutralized his usual temperament. Manuel, however, was not too happy, and started a civil war within the country with the aid of John III Vatases. The two sides eventually agreed to divide the realm, with Manuel receiving most of Thessaly, while Michael II Ducas, Theodore's nephew, controlled Epirus. In 1239, Baldwin II finally returned at the head of a
We see the seeds for Rome coming back immediately after Theodore. He's doing this blind, by the way, which is impressive. But yeah, now we're seeing the remnants of Rome come back. Okay. We love to see it.
massive crusader army, 700 knights and 30,000 footmen, which were allowed passage through Bulgaria to take the majority of the land Nicaea controlled in Thrace. A year later, Kiev was razed by the Mongols, prompting Hungary and Bulgaria to sign a defense pact as thousands of Cumans penetrated their borders. Ivanasen II realized the dangers these nomads posed as he learned of the chaos which unfolded after Bela IV of Hungary tried to weaponize many of them, so he secretly killed thousands of Cuman men, women and children before they could erode his authority from within. Bulgaria was now the most dominant power in the Balkans, and knew exactly which tactics the Mongols would employ against them. However, fate had other plans, as Ivan Asen II became the first and only member of the Asen dynasty to die of natural causes in 1241.
Wow.
He was succeeded by his son Kaliman, who was only 7 at the time, and while there was no war of succession, the country was left in the hands of a regency. That same year, the Mongols under Batu devastated Hungary and Poland. They proceeded to ravage Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, and Bulgaria until they reached the Theodosian Walls. Emperor Baldwin II's army was completely annihilated in a classic feigned retreat somewhere in Thrace, and this turned Constantinople into a Mongol tributary. On their way back, the Mongols repeated the Byzantine mistake and were caught in a Bulgarian ambush in a mountain pass.
These Bulgarians are just the masters of this ambush, man. How many people have fallen for it? They are great at that.
Sustaining heavy casualties. This only made matters worse for the Tsardom, however, as the wrath of the Khans rolled over the countryside, laying waste to the citadels of Vidin, Tornovo, Drista, Queswav, Shumen, Vana, Cherven, Wovech, Svistov, and the majority of the countryside, until the regency agreed to pay a yearly tribute to what would become the Golden Horde. Meanwhile, a completely different Mongol force under Baiju was sent to subjugate Anatolia after the Seljuk Sultan of Rum failed to pay homage in Karakorum. After Erzurum fell in the winter of 1242, Sultan Khekisroor II organized a massive force comprised of Seljuks, Latin mercenaries, Armenians, Nicaeans, Trapezuntines, Georgians, and even a large force sent by the Ayyubid Prince of Aleppo, which was ready to meet the Mongols. However, yet again a confident sultan, with just a quarter of his force, ignored his generals and rode out to meet his foe, only to be lured into a feigned retreat and be defeated. The Mongols took over Sivas and Kayseri without much opposition, before making the Sultanate of Rum and Empire of Trebizond their newest tributaries. The Nicaean emperor realized that there was much to gain within this new political landscape, and he began by inviting the ambitious Theodore Ducas to a feast. There was no red wedding this time, but Ducas was not allowed to leave, even as he accompanied John III's army, which took the now leaderless Thessaloniki. Theodore's son was allowed to keep the city, but swore fealty to Nicaea, while Michael II Ducas, who had recently taken over Thessaly, remained neutral. As for Serbia, Stefan Władysław was left powerless after the Mongols ravaged his country and crushed his Bulgarian allies. And in 1243, his brother Stefan Uroš rebelled and replaced him. Uroš would prove to be a capable administrator and diplomat, and initiate extensive mining excavations, which would transform Serbia from a buffer state neighbors fought for into a regional power. In 1246, the young Tsar Kaliman and the Patriarch, who was in favor of uniting the Bulgarian Church with the Roman one, were both poisoned, most likely by Kaliman's stepmother Irene, whose 7-year-old son Michael II Asen took the throne under a new regency which was very hostile towards Hungary and the papacy. The demoralized and exhausted Bulgarian state was immediately attacked by Michael II Ducas, who took over Albania and northern Macedonia, while John III Vatatzes captured Ceres, where the Bulgarian commander Dragotas switched sides and not only helped the Nicaean campaign, but convinced the locals to accept the rule of the Emperor of Nicaea, flipping most of the Via Egnatia. In August 1247, this allowed John III, in cooperation with the Bulgarians and Cumans, to take over the remaining Latin garrisons in Thrace. He was now breathing down the neck of Baldwin II, who once again toured Europe for reinforcements, even leaving his son as collateral in Venice as a promise to repay his debts. In the same period, William II of Morea finally completed the conquest of the Peloponnese by capturing Monemvasia and accompanied the French king on his doomed Seventh Crusade, during which a band of Genoans captured neutral Rhodes before they were expelled by the Nicaeans. In the spring of 1251, Theodoredukes hatched his final plot as he and his nephew, Michael II Ducas, launched a surprise attack on Thessaloniki. The city managed to resist the attack until John III crossed along with his army, forcing the Epirates to retreat. Nicaea took the initiative by taking several fortresses up to Castoria, and after a brief skirmish, 2 Epirate generals and the governor of Kruja switched sides, thus ending the war in a treaty which not only expanded Nicaea, but handed over the troublemaker Theodoredukes, who was imprisoned and killed shortly after.
Yeah, he was way too dangerous to be left alive, you know? But dang, man. Just like... How does Rome come back from all this? Like, I'm just waiting for the big moment. Also, the Latin Empire. Oh my goodness. It's not even an empire. It's just a city now. The Latin city. Oh, and I guess a few islands, but... Wow.
The successful campaign was the last one John III would ever undertake, as he died in 1254, leaving the throne and a powerful empire to be inherited by his son Theodoriwascaris II. The new emperor was very promising, and immediately gave his close companions high offices based on their merit and not their blood, which displeased a large portion of the nobility, and even elevated a hermit named Arsenius to the patriarchy. As soon as the news of the death of John III reached Tornovo, the Tsar organized a campaign and reclaimed much of Nicaean Thrace, but Theodoriwascaris II personally led a counterattack which broke the Bulgarian army, and Michael II was forced to sign an unfavorable peace, which made him seem weak in the eyes of his boyars. Soon after, he was murdered by his cousin on a hunt, who was himself assassinated by another cousin, until eventually a man named Constantine Tich ascended to the throne with boyar support in 1257. This new Tsar, descended from the Serbian royal family, was the first to ascend not by means of dynastic legitimacy but boyar election, and this would start an unbroken pattern until Bulgaria's disappearance in 1393, one which would decentralize the state and put it in the hands of various feudal lords. With Bulgaria vanquished, Theodoriwascaris II was now in a position of absolute power, so he demanded that Epirus cede Servia and Dyrrachium to complete his dominion over the Via Egnatia. Michael II Ducas was in no position to refuse, but the demand pushed him to a radical last-ditch effort to defeat Nicaea by allying with the Duchy of Morea and marrying his daughter to King Manfred of Sicily, who had just taken Dyrrachium. That coalition wasn't Theodoriwascaris' only problem, as he suffered from a disease, most likely a brain tumor, which got significantly worse in November 1257 and impacted his judgment. He believed that his madness was caused by the sorcery of his courtiers, especially Maria Palaiologos, so he had her thrown in a sack filled with cats, before he panicked that she may curse him again and released her. Fearing her brother's revenge, he imprisoned Michael Palaiologos, but then set him free.
4 years earlier, Michael was once again suspected of plotting, but he proved his innocence by trial of ordeal, a medieval judicial practice where the subject had to endure a painful experience to prove his innocence, in the case holding a red-hot Oh my goodness. Oh my.
In 1258, Theodore even named his 8-year-old son John as sole heir under the guardianship of his best friend George, before retreating to a monastery where he died as a monk. Wanting to reduce the tension, George called an assembly of nobles planning to resign, but to his dismay, the group, led by Michael Palaiologos, encouraged him to keep his rank and swore oaths of loyalty to him and the young emperor. It was all part of a conspiracy. A few days after the death of Theodore II, a memorial service was held in his honor in a monastery, which served as his burial place. The entire court attended, with the army encamped on a nearby plain. As soon as George and his brothers arrived, the service began. The soldiers and Latin mercenaries wanted to see the young emperor, who went outside and raised his hand to quiet them. But the men mistook this as their signal and leapt into the middle of the procession, swords in hand, along with a large mob, which found George hiding under an altar. He was brutally murdered, while his estate was ransacked by the outraged populace. Everyone who was close to the previous emperor was brutally murdered, while the man who instigated the plot, Michael Palaiologos, proclaimed himself co-emperor alongside the young John IV. Even with the backing of the clergy and nobility, this usurpation hung by a thread, ready to be snapped by the anti-Nicaean coalition. So Michael sent his brother John, who quickly raced to Castoria, catching the Epirates off guard, while their allies were still scattered throughout northern Greece. Manfred was busy in Italy and sent 400 elite knights, who joined the leaders of Epirus, Morea, Archipelago, Evia, and their considerable hosts. The Nicaean army was composed of Greek contingents from Asia, Macedonia, and Thrace, backed by 300 German knights, 1,500 Hungarian mounted archers, 600 Serbian horsemen, Bulgarian cavalry, 1,500 Seljuk and 2,000 Cuman cavalry, and some Latins. For the first time since the sack of Constantinople, the conflict involved two sides, which included every major state in the region. Over 50 years of constant plotting, betrayal, conflicts, and marriages led to this moment. The numerous participants of this campaign make the task of estimating the two sides impossible, but the outcome of this battle would determine who would rule the region. After Michael II Ducas was pushed out of Castoria and suffered many casualties in his retreat, he regrouped with his allies near Pelagonia. John knew he was outnumbered, so instead of engaging in an all-out battle, he performed hit-and-run tactics with his nomadic contingents, plundering the Nicaean baggage trains, while positioning his heavily armoured knights in good defensive positions. In the meantime, he sent spies to the enemy camp, which spread misinformation and rumours about
I have to give it to him. This is actually really smart. I think what he's going for, obviously using the speed of his horsemen to disrupt the enemy lines, that's already smart on its own. But now using spies and whatnot, like making most of a situation that does not favor him, so already I'm beyond impressed by this.
betrayal and desertion from one contingent to another. On one occasion, the illegitimate son of Michael II Ducas was angry at several knights from Morea who were openly flirting with his wife, but when he pointed it out to their commander, he was dismissed as a bastard. This prompted a large detachment to change sides and start a cascade which neutralized the entire Epirate contingent. Having learned of the enemy's plans and positions, John struck a devastating blow against the army of Morea, capturing its leader and securing the western frontier, but he was unable to gain any new lands because of the difficult terrain and pulled back to prepare for the upcoming 1260 siege of Constantinople.
Dang, John handled that like a champ, dude. Completely caught them, the Epirates, completely demolished them. That's amazing.
Nicaea mobilized its army and navy, built large siege towers, and sent agents within the city, but despite all of their efforts, the Latins barely held on. Michael knew he needed naval support to finish the job, so in 1261 he signed a treaty with Genoa to counterweight the powerful Venetian presence in the region. That same year, he sent a general at the head of 800 Cumans to keep an eye on the Bulgarians, and scout the defences of the city. But as they came across one of the nearby villages of Salimbria, a few farmers told them that the Latins and Venetians had left the city to raid a Nicaean island. The general considered his chances, knowing that if they failed to penetrate the city, the returning army would have no trouble wiping them out. But in the end, he decided to try the gamble. On the night of the 24th of July 1261, he and his men hid at a monastery near the city gates, before entering through a secret passage. After a short struggle, the guards, who were taken completely by surprise, were killed, and the Venetian quarter was set ablaze. Panic spread through the city, and Emperor Baldwin II rushed out to save his life, evacuating along with many other Latins with the help of the Venetian fleet, which came just in time to save them, but not the city. At dawn, Michael refused to believe what had just happened, until a second messenger brought him the imperial...
Dude, John carried, what the heck? He showed up there, faced against all the odds, he just completely took it. And he took Constantinople without that big of a struggle. Like, are you kidding me? Yo, this dude's amazing.
Imperial crown and sword, which Baldwin forgot in his flight. He quickly moved to the city and crowned himself Emperor of the restored Roman Empire. To solidify his claim, that Christmas he blinded John IV on his 15th birthday, banished him to a monastery, and married his 3 sisters to lesser Latin and Bulgarian nobles in an attempt to wipe out his bloodline, an act which would lead to his excommunication by his own patriarch. The newly established Palaiologos dynasty would become the last and longest ruling dynasty of the East.
Holy crap. It was Nicaea the whole time. Like, I mean Nicaea and technically Epirus, but like, yeah. A double combo of the return of Rome. Dude, I'm telling you, that's insane. The Romans really they resurrected themselves from death. They lost it all from the Crusaders, and now they took it back. Like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. Unfortunately, the effects of the Fourth Crusade would go on to forever, you know, be a wound that the Romans could never fully heal from, unfortunately. But, like, this is just amazing. Talk about the comeback of the century. Like, Rome died, and then it just came back. That's amazing, you know? That Roman resilience is just something... It's something to be admired, because the Romans did not die. They did not die easily. They went out fighting. And I'm just super amazed at this. This is just amazing, guys. Like, they really showed back up. That's just... I'm always at awe at the Romans, you know? They never cease to stop amazing me.
Eastern Roman Empire, and dedicate most of its attention to rivalries in the west and within, rarely paying any mind to the new storm brewing on its eastern frontier. After all, what was a small Turkic beylik to the restored empire? We will talk about the history of the region more in the coming months, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be
Well, my friends, that seems to be the end of the Third Crusade of this series, of the Roman Restoration. And this was a great one. This was an awesome series. I loved it so much, and I'm glad we watched it. This was just amazing. Like I said, this was just spectacularly done. And once again, the Romans showing why they are just built different. I love this series, guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from the great kings and generals. Until then, I'll see you guys tomorrow when we start something new. Bye, everyone.